Hey guys, it's Mudsy here from Muay Thai Interviews, and my next guest is an American Muay Thai fighter, and he's also the current Featherweight Bellator Kickboxing champion. I'm joined by none other than Kevin the Soul Assassin Ross. Mate, welcome. How are you, buddy?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me.
Mate, thank you for agreeing to have a chat with me. Did you have a good Christmas and New Year's?
Yeah, I was actually I drove down to Vegas. I was out there for about a week with my family that's still out there, and then I was just out in Southern California for another week and a half, and I literally just got back about an hour ago, driving all that way.
Oh, awesome, mate. And the first thing you do is have a chat with me. I feel privileged.
Of course, of course.
All right, mate. Well, I'll get into it. My first question is, how did you get the nickname Soul Assassin?
Yeah, everybody always asks me that. I actually got that my very first professional fight, which was actually in Guadalajara, Mexico. Geez, I don't even know when that was, like 12 years ago or something. Ended up fighting a guy he was 31 and 1 and had just lost his first fight, his first pro fight ever. They called me up on about 2 weeks' notice. So obviously they were bringing me out there to get his confidence back up. But unfortunately that didn't happen, and we had this crazy bloodbath of a fight, and he ended up going to the hospital afterwards. I knocked him out in the fourth round, but it was just, it was a pretty typical fight of mine, where I'm just kind of taking everything he was doing and walking through it and kept coming forward, and it just slowly kind of broke him down. And after the fight was over, this guy from the audience came up to me and in his own broken English kind of way said my nickname should be the Soul Assassin because it looked like I had killed his soul, basically. And then, it just stuck with me over the years because of the way I fight, and that's just kind of what I try to do when I go in there. I just try to break people.
Yeah, well, I think the nickname suits you down to a T, mate.
Thank you.
Now, mate, I've seen you interview on the Joe Rogan podcast, so I know how you found Muay Thai. But for those listening to this that don't know, would you be able to tell us how Muay Thai came into your life? Because I think that's such a cool story.
Yeah, it's a long story, but I'll try to keep it brief. I really, my whole life, I really loved fighting, boxing, and loved watching martial arts movies and stuff ever since I was a little kid. And I had thought about maybe boxing one day. It looked like fun to me. It looked like something I'd be interested in. But I really did love martial arts a lot, and I wanted to be able to kick and knee and elbow people too. But I never saw any real fighting that was like that. Like you'd see a lot of karate tournaments and like point sparring and forms and stuff, but there was never any real fighting when it came to martial arts, just stuff in the movies. And one day I happened to be watching ESPN. This was back in 1994 or maybe 96. It was right around there. And they used to show these old school Muay Thai fights at like midnight for whatever reason, and I just happened to be watching it one night, and I immediately knew that's what I wanted to do. If I was ever gonna fight, if I was ever gonna like pursue this, like that was it. I was hooked immediately. And that was 94, but I actually didn't get started until 2003.
Wow.
I had a lot of personal struggles. I was dealing with alcoholism and just, really living a unhealthy lifestyle. Living in Vegas and coming up there isn't exactly the best place to be if you have a tendency towards that kind of life, and
Yeah, just amplifies it all.
yeah, it's bad. It's really bad. It's a bad place for that kind of thing. And so I'd never really told anybody about this dream of mine to be a fighter. I didn't even take myself seriously to that much, so I didn't really want to like tell other people about it.
Yeah.
I mean, if you knew me back then, you probably would have laughed in my face too. So, I was a completely different person. So I never really felt confident enough to express that to anybody. Just one random night, I happened to be talking to a buddy of mine, and I just told him about it, and I thought he was gonna laugh at me, and he really just was like, I don't understand why you don't do it, you know. And I told him all the like doubts I had, and I had at that time I was probably like 17, 18. I already felt like I was too old to get going, you know. Like I was like, most of these people start when they're kids, you know. I don't know if I can do this. I'm like, all I do every day is party and drink, and you know, to think I could go be a professional fighter is just like ludicrous to me. And you know, he's like, you should just do it, man. He's like, I think if anybody could do it, you could. And you know, that made me feel good, and gave me some confidence. But I kind of just put it in the back of my mind, like I had done all those years up to that point. And several years later, he ended up passing away. He'd actually been born with a kind of a defective heart, and was in and out of hospitals his whole life. And you know, when he passed away, I promised myself that I would go after this dream to be a fighter. Since he didn't get to live, I was going to live for the both of us. But unfortunately, his death really sent me to a really even darker place, down a really bad road, you know, and things really got pretty bad from that point on. Friends dying, going to jail, myself almost going to jail several times, and this series of events happened within this like month time, and it just one day I woke up and it just hit me that I was wasting my life, you know, and that if my friend was still alive, he'd beat the hell out of me for just pissing away everything because I was just too scared to go after this dream because I was worried about failing. Like that was the only thing holding me back was the fact that I was afraid of it. And you know, I kind of snapped out of it, and 2 days later I was in the gym, and the rest is history.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's awesome, bro. I love it. That's one of the reasons why I did this, because I mean I ask people different questions because I want to know different things about them from what I want to know from other people. But the one question I will always ask them is how they found Muay Thai, because quite often, more often than not, I find that Muay Thai does quite good for people, like especially like you, or people that, you know, like getting into street fights and stuff, and then they realize that Muay Thai training it disciplines them and puts them on a better path, should I say?
Yeah, for sure.
Now, mate, one of the things I wanted to ask you was, being such the Muay Thai purist that you are, what do you think when you see other fight codes, say UFC or boxing, for example, try and glamorize disrespecting, trash talking, or even trying to, you know, fight your opponents at press conferences and weigh-ins, whereas Muay Thai is the complete opposite. It's about honor and respecting your opponent, and it's not always glitz and glamour.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's really the thing that separates Muay Thai from all those other disciplines and all those other fighting styles is the respect, the culture, the heritage, you know, and you see that and you feel that with the fighters. Even, you know, very rarely do you see two guys who are like trying to make it that kind of show, you know, unless they just don't like each other for whatever reason, which, you know, is, I think there's a place for it. I mean, I don't think everybody needs to be like this super nice person and like friendly with each other, but what I find is that, you know, with boxing and with MMA, it almost becomes like people think it's expected of them.
Yeah.
So they just do it just to do it for the show, as opposed to it being like the way it really is. And so you'll see these two guys and they build it up like they hate each other and they're going to kill each other. And then they have this fight, which most of the time doesn't live up to it. And then after the fact, they're just like, oh, we were just doing that to promote the fight. And for me, I don't really have any respect for that, because, you know, if you're pretending to be something you're not, and then all of a sudden after the fact, you're going to say, oh, that was just for a show. Like do it if you are that way. You know, it's funny because I used to talk to Joe Schilling about this a lot, because like we're very polar opposite. Like he's very emotional and he gets really angry, and I'm very like laid back. And he was like, do you think I should like calm down or like be nice? I'm like, no, don't do that. But don't feel like you need to put on this show. Like, just be you, man. I was like, just be you. Like, whatever that is, good or bad. Like, I think that's what really people enjoy, and what kind of reaches people is just be yourself. And there's going to be people that like you, and there's going to be people that hate you. And that's no matter what you do. So going out there pretending to be something you're not, you know, in the end, it just, I don't have any really respect for it.
Yeah. No. Well said, man. Well put. Now, mate, what I wanted to ask you was, when you first started out on the amateur and then we can say pro circuit as well in America, it was often quite difficult to get you fights and matchups.
Yeah.
From since then until now, Muay Thai in America has come a long way. Would you be able to talk a little bit about how far it has come in terms of like quality of matchups, more opportunities for people to progress in Muay Thai, governing bodies, organisations, and also the promotions as well as popularity?
Yeah, well, it's without a doubt night and day different from when I started. Like when I started, there wasn't even YouTube. Like, you know what I mean? Like you couldn't go on the internet and find fights. You'd have to go to the Thai market and find some fights from Lumpini like 3 years ago.
Yeah.
It is very inaccessible. It was very hard to find. It was very hard to watch or to follow anyone. So like for me, when I was coming up, I didn't have anybody to look up to really. Like a lot of the guys I was watching fight, that they're long retired, and particularly as far as Americans go, like there wasn't really anybody that was showing me like this is the way, this is the path, this is what you need to aim for and strive for, and um, that made it tough. It also made it a little bit easier in the sense that I set my sights on the highest level of anybody, like the highest level of fighters there are. So to me, that was unattainable. So I was always continually pushing myself harder and harder because I knew no matter what I did, no matter how hard I trained, no matter how long I do this, I'm never going to be that good. So I'm always playing catch up. Starting as late as I did, and all those factors. That's what's continued to keep me motivated over the years. But as far as where the sport is, it's like this double-edged sword kind of thing. With the growth, you also have the good and the bad come with it. Like so when I started out, it was very easy to get fights at the lower level, like the starting out 0 to 10 fight range. Like we fought all the time. I think I had like 10 fights my first year because they were just like gym. You'd travel around, you'd show up at a different gym, you'd fight guys that were like 30 pounds out of your weight class or whatever, because that's just what we did. We did it for the love of it. We did it for the fun of it. We did it because we just all really had this passion for Muay Thai, and what was good about that was nobody was in a rush to like get to the big show because there was no big show to get to. You know what I mean? So nobody was in a rush to go pro. Like you didn't want to go pro because like you could fight really regularly as an amateur, and it was great, But now it's kind of flipped where there's more opportunities once you get to the pro level. The lower level for guys starting out, that like they pretty much banned that whole smoker circuit, which we used to have here for guys to get experience and do that kind of thing. Like they pretty much outlawed it and made it to where the commission has to regulate everything, amateurs to pros. So now even the amateurs, they got to pay to get medicals. The show has to pay for insurance and stuff. So people don't want to put these cards on anymore other than pro cards because they're going to get paid and they can charge and that kind of thing. So it's good and it's bad.
Yeah.
Just as well as I said before, how, when we were starting out, it was just for the love of the sport. Where now, like, everybody's in such a rush. Like, everybody wants to get on TV. Everybody wants to do this, but they're not putting the time in. They're not getting the experience. So yeah, they might turn pro and get a fight, but how long do you think you're going to last if you don't have the experience that to get you there?
Yeah.
I don't know. It's kind of a MMA mentality, I find, where everybody's in such a rush to get that money, to get on TV. But how many guys do you see now that are able to maintain that level? It's very rare, other than a select few. But you look at the best boxers in the world. I mean, how many hundreds of fights do they have as an amateur? Like that's how they're able to get to where they got to.
Yeah.
You got to look at your amateur career as your schooling, basically. Like if you don't go to school, if you don't learn the things you need to learn you're not going to be able to hang at the top. Even if you can maybe win a fight or two, you're never going to be able to stay there. So I tell everybody, like, unless you're forced to go pro, stay amateur. Unless you're just destroying people and it's not even funny anymore.
Yeah.
Oh, you just can't get fights, and that's pretty much what happened to me. I just couldn't get fights anymore, so I had to take up a fight. I think my first pro fight was actually a boxing fight. So, I couldn't get fights anymore. Like I pretty much had beaten everybody at the amateur level in the States, and that there was really no choice. I had to go pro.
Yeah, and one thing I wanted to ask, like, because you mentioned before, like, so back in the days, you would fight people that are 30 pounds or heavier than you. Do you think a lot of people these days are a bit too precious? Like,
Oh my gosh, like so bad. It's so bad. Like everybody's wants to handpick their opponents. Like if they have a little tummy ache, they cancel fights, and it's just a different mentality. In the beginning, when I was coming up, it was like do or die. Like you don't back out of fights, you don't pass up fights.
yeah,
It doesn't matter if you're sick, hurt, tired, whatever, how much experience they have, how little training you had going into it, because you knew you had to take what you could get.
mm,
You couldn't hand choose your fights, or you'd never get fights. So that's how I was able to get all the fights I did. Like if I would have only taken the right fights, I'd probably have like five.
yeah, yeah,
And unfortunately, again, with the growth of the sport, there's not a lot of people that are putting in that work. There's not a lot of people that are traveling overseas and paying their dues anymore. So even if it's getting better, it's also really hindering the sport and hindering kind of the mentality behind it. It's completely changed in a lot of ways, not for the best.
yeah. Mate, at what point in your development or your career did you realize that you could be a force to be reckoned with the rest of the world?
I'm still trying to get there. No, I don't think I ever really got to that point. I don't. I think I've always been, for whatever reason, been able to maintain the same mentality I had from the beginning, which is like I'm just trying to be the best I can be. Obviously I've realized I can hang with the best as well, but I don't. I don't know. I guess I just don't like envision myself there. I consider myself a beginner because of the fact that there's no end to what you can learn, how good you can get. Um, and in that aspect, I think we're all beginners, So I don't feel any different than I felt the day I walked into the gym. I might have like more confidence and more ability, but I still feel like I'm just starting. So
Yeah,
so it's hard for me to kind of wrap my brain around that. I mean, that's kind of always been a weird thing for me, especially with like the growing popularity of it, and people kind of viewing me as this person in the sport. Like I don't view myself that way, and I never have. So it's always a kind of a strange, surreal thing when people talk to me and look up to me, and that like I don't feel like anybody else. I feel I'm just a baby.
you're doing good things, man. Um, Now, in an interview you did once, I can't remember whether I read it or I listened to it, but you said that once you started to get really good at Muay Thai, your coach at the time realised he didn't have the necessary means to help you reach the next level, so he recommended another trainer to help you. Is that correct? And would you be able to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, I mean, more or less it is. That really came from when I moved up here to CSA. It was right after I blew my knee out, and Kieran, he's a really amazing coach, but he's not like a traditional Thai coach. He has a very good understanding of the whole aspects of fighting, whether it be MMA, boxing, Muay Thai. He has a very good understanding of everything, but he's not at a high level in specifically Muay Thai. You know what I mean? So for me, it was tough not having that person that was at a higher level than me as my coach. For me to really learn from. I mean, without a doubt, he keeps me sharp and keeps me where I need to be, but he can't really give me that side of it because I'm at the level I'm at. Like he was never at this level in Muay Thai or anything like that, but he's he's humble enough to know that he's not there, and does.
Yeah.
And a lot of coaches, they fake it, they pretend, in which ends up just hurting their fighters and students. And when it comes down to it, eventually that person's going to realize that, and they're going to leave, or it's going to cause some friction, And
Yeah.
and Kieran is always very, very vocal and adamant about, like, this is what I know, this is what I don't know. If there's someone out there that you want to learn from, he's very, very accommodating to me. And um, you know, not only was he okay with it, he helped me set up training with other people and getting the coaching that I need from them, which is great. It's such a rare thing in the coaching world to kind of vocalize that you have some limitations. Like, we all have limitations. I don't see what the big deal is.
Yeah.
Like, there's always going to be somebody better, and there's always going to be room to grow. So at some stage, you're going to kind of learn as much as you can from one coach, and you need to be able to expand.
Yeah, no. When I heard that, I thought that was quite admirable because yeah, like especially like in Thailand, a lot of like Thais, they like to save face, so they don't really like to speak up. Whereas Westerners, we have no problem telling people what we think.
Yeah.
So I really like that when I read that or when I heard it. But mate,
Yeah.
you also talk about the mental side of Muay Thai a lot. Could you elaborate on that and how Muay Thai is just as much a mental battle as it is a physical battle?
Yeah. Well, I think it's all mental. A lot of people like put ratios to it. It's like 80% mental, 20% physical. But for me, I find that it has to be 100% mental, because if you don't have it mentally, it doesn't matter how good physically you are.
Yeah,
At a certain stage, a lot of people get away with stuff in the beginning, where their natural ability and physicality um, can overcome a lot of those limitations. But eventually, you start evening out, and if you haven't built up those other aspects, like, you're gonna fall hard. And that's something I really noticed in the beginning, because I was very fortunate, and I got stopped my first fight. I got TKO'd in like the third round, and it really opened my eyes to, do you really want to do this?
yeah,
Where most of the people I trained with, like, they went on these really long undefeated streaks, and it developed a lot of really bad habits, not only physically but mentally as well. And most of them, once they finally did lose, which will happen probably, it really broke them. Some of them, it completely broke them to the point where they were done after that. Like, you don't want to get to this point in your career where you haven't really learned if this is what you really want to do or not, or you haven't learned how hard you really should be pushing yourself. So for me, I was exposed to that like day one. It was the best thing that ever could have happened to me. Um, and there was a lot to it, but it really just opened my eyes to that. And as far as the mental aspect of it goes, it's really like anything else. Like, just like the physical aspect of it, it's something you have to develop and train and explore over time. There's not just one thing you can do. Like, a lot of people ask me that, and they ask me for advice on that, but I don't know how you give someone advice on that. I mean, there's so many ways and so many different approaches to it, and what works for me isn't going to work for you. And
yeah,
I couldn't even like tell you what it is that I've been able to do, because it's a whole different art in itself. It's like me telling you how to be a fighter. Like, it's a lot.
yeah,
You know what I mean? Like, I can show you like how to throw a few punches and stuff, but unless you got a spare 10, 15 years of your life, I can't really teach you how to be a great fighter. So to like try to short sell someone on what they should do to be mentally strong is really an impossible thing. It's you just gotta kind of play around with different stuff, and like talk to different people. Like what do you do on this day? Like, because even what I do it varies. It's never been the same thing. It's never this one technique or thing I do or don't do. It's always different. Every fight's different. Every day can be different. And that's the same with the mental side of it, the training side of it, the diet side of it, all those things, you need to be flexible and you need to be able to adjust to what is working, what isn't working. You need to be able to experiment with different things. And that's really how you develop as a fighter and as a person is to continually be testing and checking yourself. You don't ever want to get to this point when you think you just have it figured out, because that's the worst thing you could ever do.
Once you think you've got it figured out, then bam, it hits you, and then you realize you
Yeah.
haven't got it figured out.
Yeah, you just know you never have it figured out. So don't think you're going to get to that point. Like, you can't get to that point because there is no end to this game, So as soon as you have one part figured out, there's another part you're slacking on. And as soon as you go over there, this part's going to start falling off too. You can't keep every piece at 100% of the time. It's a juggling act, and there's so many aspects to this game that it's nearly impossible. But it's also the thing for me that always keeps me motivated, because there's not a point I can get to where I'm just like, yeah, I got it, I'm done.
Yeah,
I
good.
got that. And again, that's why I do still feel like a beginner, because I think you have to be that way. I mean, I think that's what keeps guys in the sport I mean, look at Senchai. Me and him, we're the same age actually, and he's still just crushing people.
Yeah,
But he never got to that point where he just was like okay with like the way he is. Like, that he's still like pushing himself and testing himself and having fun with it, and then never got to that, like, he didn't ever plateau.
yeah,
you know and that's really hard not to get to that point, particularly when you're just like stomping people out all the time.
yeah,
If you don't have anybody pushing you, it can be very difficult to push yourself.
yeah. And that's another reason why I love Muay Thai, because it's an awfully humbling sport. Like, I've noticed, like, say you could be in the gym sparring one day, and you'd be doing all right, and you think, oh yeah, I'm doing pretty good, and then the next day you just get lit up like a Christmas tree, and you think, nah, I still suck.
Yeah, anytime I even remotely start to think I'm getting good, I just smack myself in the face and like, you're not good. Shut up. Get back to work. Get back to work. There's more to do. There's more to do. There's always more to do.
Mate, now, you said that over your career you've had 30 or over 30 fights fall through during your career. How did you stay motivated and remain positive throughout it all? Because I could imagine that it could get quite disheartening, and you start questioning things at times.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, that's always been one of the more difficult things for me. Like, if I could just have fights whenever I'd want them, this would be a lot easier to do. That's been one of the most difficult aspects, higher difficult aspects of this sport for me. Um, Particularly that time when, like, there was a long stretch of time I didn't fight, just because I couldn't get one, not because of injuries, not because of anything like that, just because I could not get a fight. And yeah, it was really tough, and that's what almost got me to switch over to MMA. It's what almost got me to switch over to boxing. This was back in, I mean, it's still today. I'm not fighting as much as I would like, but this was back in 2009. Really, I had a long series of fights fall through, and a lot of the people I was training with, they're fighting in the UFC. They're fighting, in other huge MMA promotions, and they're just like, why don't you do MMA, man? We're like, we get you a fight right now, and then, like, and I'm seeing like all the fights they're getting, all the money they're making, all the exposure they're getting, and it was really tough not to make that switch. What really kept me from it was, if I was gonna switch, I would completely switch. I don't want to be half good at both,
Yeah,
And I was like, if I'm gonna do this, I'm gonna do it all the way. Like, I'm gonna go and be the best MMA fighter I can be. I'm not have no distractions. If I make the switch, it's permanent. And I wasn't ready to do that. I was close because I just couldn't get any fights, and I was at that point where it was like, I would rather do a style MMA that I don't like as much, but at least I'm fighting. you
Yeah.
know, or boxing or whatever it may be. As long as I'm fighting, I'm happy. But Muay Thai to me is it's so high above any other style. Just it's what I love. It's my passion, you know, where I enjoy fighting regardless. So, at least if I'm fighting, that's better than nothing. But yeah, so I got to this point. So it was going into it was either going into 2009 or 2010, and it was like my New Year's resolution was I'm gonna give Muay Thai one more year. I'm gonna give it everything I have, and if at the end of the year I'm still not getting the fights I want to get, or it's not where I want it to get to, I'll make that switch. And like 2 days after New Year's, I got a call to fight Kang En for that WBC title in China, and which was on like 2 weeks' notice
Yeah.
again. And things really picked up from there. I think I won like 3 titles that year and had like 6 or 7 fights, and then the explosion of Muay Thai started to happen from there, and it just never lost steam from that point, which I'm so grateful for. Who knows where I'd be or what would have happened if I would have switched. And again, like that's something that kept me from doing it too, because I felt like how many people are even pushing the sport? Like a handful of us. Like if I stop, who's gonna pick up the slack? You know.
Yeah.
Now I'm putting that on the other 3 or 4 people that are doing what I'm doing, and I just couldn't do that, you know.
Yeah. Now, mate, you said mentally in one of your interviews you went through a bad stage after losing your world title and then getting KO'd. How do you bounce back from that and start focusing on more positive things?
It was tough. It was a really kind of hard time in my life, not just in fighting, but stuff in my personal life. My dog passed away from cancer, actually, like a couple weeks before I lost the world title, and yeah, it was just there was just so much going on, you know, and then not only losing 2 fights, but I got stopped twice in a row,
Yeah.
and I was really kind of left at this point where I was like, can I still do this? Like, am I still good enough to do this? Am I still physically able to do this? Maybe my brain can't like take the beatings anymore, you know, and all these questions were going through my mind, and I think what finally hit me was I've had all these questions from the day I started. I mean, that's what kept me from starting, is like, am I good enough to do this? Am I too old to do this? You know, and it just hit me that those questions have never gone away. And it's not about the question, it's about what are you gonna do?
Yeah.
Either you're gonna make that allow you to quit as a reason that like that's what's gonna make me give up, or I'm gonna use that to push me. And for me, it's always been, there's only ever been really 3 questions I've ever had about if I'm gonna continue fighting. Is like, one, do I still love to do it? And yeah, the answer was yes, because I wouldn't do this if I didn't love it.
Yeah.
I don't know why you would.
Well, let's face it, we don't do it for the money.
Of course. So that was an easy thing to that was an easy question to answer. And then 2 was, do I still like I'm still improving? And yeah, I feel like I was getting better than I'd have ever been. Um, um, and am I still physically able to do this? And like I went back and I watched that fight, because like that second loss, I was like, oh man, you know, I got knocked out, and you know, I've never been knocked out before. I've been stopped before, and even that one, I wasn't really knocked out. I was like down, they stopped it, but either way. But then when I went back and saw it, and I realized I took like 2 gigantic knees to the face, and and I was still relatively okay. I was like, oh, I guess I can kind of still take a punch if I can take a flying knee to the face and just be okay. So, you know, that really answered all the questions I had, and not to say like I didn't still have all those doubts and stuff, but it I think what's important is to know why you do this,
Yeah.
whether it's the beginning or the end, or wherever you are, and remember why you do this. You know, that's what when we went to Peru and I had that fight, it really brought me back to the feeling of what it was like in the very beginning. You know, we go out there, there's no cameras, there's no TV, there's hardly any people. It was like being back in the amateur days. You know, every single person that was there had such a strong passion for this sport, and you could feel it. And there was they were doing I think it was like the Pan Am amateur tournament or something during the day, and then our fight was that night. So all those kids were there. We got to go and watch all of them fight, and just seeing them fight and seeing people at the beginning stages of their career. I was just like, oh man, it like I felt like I was reborn again. You know, it was such a wonderful thing, and I mean, that really kind of saved my career. I mean, you know, obviously the fight helped that I did so well and I knocked the guy out and all those things. But it was a combination of all those things that really re-motivated me and kind of relit a new fire. And then, you know, with my switch to Bellator and kickboxing, that aspect of it also kind of remotivated me, because now it's even though it's a similar sport, it's completely different, and it caused me to have to learn new things and, you know, adjust different things. And, you know, it was like, again, it was like starting over, and you have all this motivation to like be better and to have different aspects. And so, you know, as much as I miss Muay Thai, it really kind of helped me at this stage in my career to kind of re-motivate me, you know.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Now, mate. You told on the Joe Rogan podcast a really cool story. A week before you had your world title fight, you broke your rib.
Yeah.
Yeah. For people that haven't heard that story, can you tell us?
Yeah, I don't know why. Like, that's been a theme throughout my entire career. The amount of fights I've actually had where I'm even remotely healthy is, I don't know, like 10%. And usually it's something horrible like that where so I was less than 2 weeks out from the fight. One day I was sparring with Chaz Mulkey, and he kicked me in the back side of my ribs. It wasn't so bad. I mean, it was hard and all that, but it felt like it bruised it, and I was pretty sore. And then the next day I was sparring again with Eddie Abasolo, and he hit me with a body shot, and I felt my ribs just go pop. And I immediately like hit the ground. I couldn't breathe. I couldn't even stand up. Eventually I finally like straightened myself out, and my rib was like protruding out of my well, it didn't pop through the skin or anything, but you could see that it was sticking out.
Shit.
And I was like, that's not good. That's not right. I'm like, what the hell is that? You know, like, it kind of freaked me out. And I kind of like pressed on it and like kind of popped it back into place. And you know, my coach, he was kind of freaked out about what happened, and he was like, all right, we're gonna go get it checked out tomorrow. But he says, if it's broken, I'm not gonna let you fight. You know, if you're gonna risk like puncturing your lung or something like that, because he knows I would fight anyway. You know, like, yeah, that's nothing new to me. But he's like, I'm gonna pull you from this fight. There's no way I'm gonna let you fight. And I'm like, and it was such a hard thing to deal with. The next day I ended up getting it X-rayed, and what it was is it's called an intercostal tear, where your ribs basically separate. Like cartilage like breaks off. So that's why it was like sticking out, because it lost like its attachment, which they say is more painful than broken ribs, which I've had before, and this was way worse. Like, I literally couldn't even take a breath. After that night when I went home, I just laid in bed and was taking these very short breaths. Like, I couldn't have my lungs move my rib cage, you know, and I'm just like laying in bed for 2 days, not being able to breathe. 10 days out from this world title, and it's like, what am I gonna do? You know, like, of course I can just go in there and stand there and get knocked out, but like, do I want to do that? Do I want to go in there so broken? You know, I felt like I'd worked so hard for, what was this, like 2-3 years ago, so like 12 years I've been killing myself in this sport, finally to get to this point, not only to fight for the world title, but to fight somebody I really respect and just like wanted to get in there with. You know, like, I'd have always wanted to fight Thompson since I learned about him years and years prior to that, and it was like we're so close, and everything had been going so well. Like training was great, my weight was great, I'd never felt better, and then this happened less than 2 weeks out from the fight, and so I'm left there with the decision whether to do it or not to do it, which is tough, because it's all on me. Like if part of me says maybe cancel the fight, wait till you're 100% so you can at least give an honest showing of yourself, because I couldn't even touch it, and I was like, he's gonna hit me there,
Yeah.
and he's gonna hit me there. I'm gonna go down, and what? Like I lost because like I have this injury, and I just didn't want to do that. I didn't want to kind of half-ass it, and even for him, I didn't want to like go in there like with this injury. Like I don't want someone to be injured coming into a fight with me. I want them to be at their best.
Yeah.
So it was really a struggle for how I was gonna deal with this and whether I was gonna pass it up or not. And so, like I said, I had like 2 days where I was stuck in bed. I couldn't move. And I still had a week of training I had to do, and I couldn't even take a breath.
Yeah.
So there's all these things like, you shouldn't do this. You should just pass it up. You can fight again. A couple months from now, whatever. It's not that big a deal. But I think having faced so many injuries in my career and fought so many times broken and all of the things I've had to overcome and adversities really showed me that so many things you think you can't overcome, whether it be an injury or a limitation or anything, like you never really know until you try. You just don't know, and so many times I've went into a fight, like that first pro fight I ever had, I injured my shin so badly that I couldn't even touch it going into that fight. And, I did that and I crushed the guy. It's like you still don't know till you get in there how you're going to react to it, how your body's going to handle it, what the adrenaline's going to do, whether that person's even going to touch you there.
Yeah.
But it's so easy to view these things and say, well, I have this, and it's easy to say because everybody understands, like, oh, you're injured, of course, but you are the person that has to live with that.
Yeah.
And for me, it's always like, if I'm breathing, if I can stand up, I'm gonna fight, So that's really what it came down to, was he still has to hit me there, and I'm gonna give it everything I have for every second I can. If I go down and I can't deal with it, I can't deal with it. But it still has to happen.
Yeah.
And then I went in there and probably put on one of the fights of my life, and and it again, it just reconfirmed those things that I already knew, which is you just have to kind of face these things, whether it be fear, whether it be injury, whether it be doubt. And I would never tell anyone else to do that, like I would never, like I try to tell people, like, I would never like tell you should go into a fight with broken hands, broken shins, broken ribs, broken teeth. I did that.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But you have to be the one that deals with consequences. You know what I'm saying? Like I very easily could have snapped that rib and it could have killed me. Like that was a possibility. I was the one that had to be who I'm the person that was going to have to deal with the consequences.
Yeah.
And so I could never tell anyone else you should or shouldn't do this. But for me, it's always like, where do you draw that line between you're too injured or you're just kind of being a baby about it?
Yeah.
And no one can really say where that line is. Only you can, because nobody knows where that is except for you. And you are the person that has to live with whether you quit on something or whether you push it and maybe things don't turn out so great. And, I've had plenty of fights where I did go in extremely injured or extremely sick and they didn't turn out so great. But I am willing to deal with the consequences of whatever that is. It's always been a very easy question for me because I thought I was going to be dead like 15 years ago, and it was pretty obvious that was going to happen. And as I said, Muay Thai saved my life. for me, all of this is extra because I don't think I should be here anyway. So it's never even a question in my mind whether I'm going to do something or not. If I can do it, I'm going to do it.
Yeah.
But that's a hard thing to just tell other people to do, you know?
Yeah. Well, I was going to get to that a little bit later, but seeing as we touched on it, we'll get to it now. That your fight with Michael Tomahawk Thompson from Australia, that I'll forever remember as my favourite fight of yours.
Oh, thank you.
Man, how he wasn't KO'd from that jumping knee that you delivered, and he continued to throw down until the final bell with a shattered nose. That is absolutely beyond me. Not to mention, mate, the sound of his nose cracking. That was sickening, man. That was. Oh, is he probably the toughest guy you've fought?
I mean, I fought so many tough people. He's definitely up there. You know what I'm saying? Like, he's always been one of my favorite fighters. You know, long before we ever fought, I love watching him fight and had nothing but respect for him. And those are the only types of people I want to fight. You know, like a lot of people I think want to fight individuals they think they can beat.
Yeah.
I want to fight people that I don't know. You know, like I want people that are going to test me. I want people that excite me to watch fight because I want to be in there with an exciting fighter. I cannot stand being in there with somebody that bores me.
Yeah.
'Cause I get bored too, you know, like I feel what it feels like to be in the audience watching a boring fighter. So for me, I throw caution to the wind and do stuff I probably shouldn't do just because I want to make it exciting, you know, and I'm not going to say that's how you should fight. I don't think it's not a smart way to fight. And, you know, I've lost a lot of fights because of the fact that I wanted to make it exciting.
Yeah.
But that's something I have to live with. I have to look back on my career and look at a fight and be like, oh, you kind of just half-assed the victory. Like you could have like went out there and actually fought him, but you kind of coasted or whatever the case may be. And again, it's like anything else. It's about finding that balance where I'm not being completely reckless.
Yeah.
But at the same time, not being too safe either, because I just have to. I gotta fight the way that I feel and what's in my heart and what's in my soul. And I think that's what everybody needs to do is just whatever. Like fighting to me is an expression of who you are. Like you can't pretend in there. You can talk all this stuff outside and say all these things, but when you're in there, you're completely exposed, and you have to be who you are.
Yeah.
Because if you're not, it'll be really obvious. So that's always been a hard thing for me. Trying to be a little bit smarter, particularly at this stage in my career, and still be myself. You know, because naturally I just want to like go crazy and just do stupid stuff and just brawl, you know, but I still have all this ability too that I should really use, and that's something I've been kind of working on over the years is to still be me, but use the talents and the gifts that I have and that I've developed over the last 15 years, you know, and don't just fight for the sake of fighting, you know, like use your abilities, use all this time you've put in, all the fights you've had, all the experience you've had. Don't just go out there and be an amateur about it and just go crazy, you know? So it's tough.
So can I ask you then, do the stadium fights in Bangkok bore you?
Now they kind of do.
Yeah.
You know, they're different now because it's...
Well, put it this way, I know at least with rounds 1 and 2, I can go and get a beer or go to the toilet because nothing's going to happen.
Yeah. Well, you know, I mean, the thing is, like, that's always been an aspect of it, but it used to be just like a lot of sports. I mean, boxing and MMA both went through this transition where when you talk about the golden era of the sport, it's when people just went in there to fight. For 5 rounds, they just fought hard. And again, I'm not going to try to say this is the way it should be. It's what I prefer, you know. I understand the whole money aspect of it, which I find ruins pretty much everything, is the money aspect of things. But I'm a purist, you know. I think it would be a lot better if we all just did this for the love of it, because it's unfortunate that it does change things a lot, and you don't really see those crazy exciting fights like you used to.
Yeah.
It used to be every fight was that way. Now
Yeah.
it's maybe once in a while, like you kind of know who does fight like that and who doesn't.
Yeah.
And there's so many reasons for that. More often than not, it's the promotion that kind of hinders people because they make people feel like if you lose, we're gonna cut you.
Yeah.
You know, like that's a huge thing in the MMA, particularly UFC, which is with the growing popularity and all the money in it. Like people cannot risk looking bad or losing. Where before, like back in like the Pride days in Japan, it was just like go out there, put your heart out there, and we'll bring you back. We
Yeah.
don't care if you win or lose or in there for 5 seconds. And for me, I feel like that is the greatest thing in the world. I mean, like doing things with your heart and with passion, with zero thought about what it's gonna make you look like and what it's gonna do for your career, and what it's gonna do for your bank account. You know, all those
Mm.
things to me just ruin not just fighting but everything. Really, music,
Yep.
movies. That's
Yep.
kind of the way of the world is, unfortunately. But things go in that cycle, and um, with the growth and popularity, you got to take that aspect of it too. The one good thing though is for me, it just makes the people who still do that stand out like so
Yeah.
much. You know, it's easy to find the guys and the girls that fight that way because they're just you know who they are. Like you can't hide. Everybody else is like the same. It's basically like watching the same fighter every single time. You know,
Yeah.
it's boring. It bores me.
But you know, one thing that I do love about it, and it's the one thing that makes Muay Thai what it is in Thailand and nowhere else in the world, is like at Raja and Omnoi and Lumpini. Like I could just watch the gamblers half the time, like when they're going off their heads, you know, sitting there going bah, 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 and they're all doing their hand signals, and like sometimes if the fights, I'll just sit around and just like look at the gamblers, and I'm just like, wow, like you
Yeah.
would never find that anywhere else in the world, you know.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy. You know,
It's
if you've never seen a live fight in Thailand, especially at the big stadiums, there's nothing like it. Like and so many aspects of it. There's nothing like the atmosphere, the as you said, the gamblers, the fights for them. You know, it's crazy.
like you
Um,
got
I, I was fortunate enough to see tons of fights at the old Lumpini, and I haven't been to the new one yet, but I'm sure it's not the same.
no, it's not, and it's just so raw. Like there's no like you know people get their own change rooms. It's you're all in one big area, and you can all see everyone. And just I just love like all the emotion that you can't really capture it on camera, but when you're there, you can just feel the emotion. Like it's so raw, and you got
Yeah,
that Naman Moy smell in the air, and you're just like, oh, this is the best thing ever.
yeah, it's great.
N- Now, mate, I know you're probably sick of talking about this, but I have had a couple of people ask me what it was like fighting Malapet, which you won, and also fighting Sanchai, which you lost to a decision. What were
Yeah.
both those experiences like for you, mate?
They were nerve-wracking to say the least. You know, in different ways, and they were both at different stages of my career. You know, going up against Malapet, some people, you know, you look back and be like, "Oh, Kevin just beat him," and it was like Malapet didn't take him seriously, and they say all these things. But what you got to realize is, at that time, Malapet was destroying everybody, just crushing people, particularly foreigners. Like it
Yeah,
was not even funny. I mean, it was like watching what Senchai does to foreigners.
yeah,
Like he just toyed with them. It was a joke. It was really a joke. And what you got to understand is I watched him fight from the day I started, you know, 15 years ago, like demolishing people. Uh, First off, he fought 3 weight classes above me at the time. He was fighting at 154, and I was fighting at 140. And you know, when they told me that it was possible matchup, I was like, "What? How's that gonna happen? We don't even weigh the same thing. Not to mention the fact that he's at such a higher level than me,
yeah,
you know." But I was like, "Yeah, I'll fight him, I'm sure." You know, we ended up fighting at a catch weight at 47, which he didn't make. I think he weighed in at 52 or something. I don't know. I don't think he even tried to make weight, but yeah, it was it was a nerve-wracking thing. It was both for him and Sanchai. It was this constant juggling act and revolving door of some days I would wake up and think, what the hell are you thinking? Like, there is no way in hell you're gonna get out of the first 10 seconds, let
Yeah.
alone a whole fight. Like, how are you going to do this? You don't even have remotely a fraction of the experience as them. When it came to Malapet, you're not the same size as him. All these things, that were like just drowning me in doubt. And then other days I would wake up and it was like any other fight,
Mm.
like just put the work in and do what you got to do. And yeah, it was probably a daily, like every day I'd wake up not knowing which end of that I was gonna be on, and like a lot of things, just like earlier when I was talking about injuries and stuff, it was that same approach mentally was they've never fought me before. It doesn't matter if they fought 5,000 people and beat all of them. They haven't fought me. And I don't know what's going to happen until I get in there. You know,
Yeah.
who knows what's going to happen? Maybe I get knocked out in 5 seconds. Maybe somehow I win, or maybe somehow I do well. And what's always kind of pushed me is wanting to kind of show myself and earn people's respect. Like the first time I ever fought in Thailand, it was like in my mind, it wasn't like I want to beat this guy. He had like 200 something fights. It was I want to earn not just that fighter, but the people watching. I want to earn these people's respect. I don't want to be just some foreigner over there that's like, whatever, like
Yeah.
I didn't want my training to be half-assed. I wanted to be in there with every one of them and killing myself, and I didn't want things to be adjusted for me. I didn't want to get put in there with some cab driver. I was like, I told my coach, I was like, if you put me in there with a freaking cab driver, I'm gonna walk out of the ring. I will not fight them. I'm like, you better give me a killer.
Yeah.
Like I don't understand the point in doing this if you're not gonna test yourself. So again, it was you just don't know what's gonna happen until you get in there. And for me, I wanted to go, and no matter what happened, I was like, they're gonna remember who I am. I don't care if I win, lose, draw. They're gonna remember me, and
Yeah.
that was, I think that's what kind of was one of my motivation factors. It was never really about winning and losing, and none of my fights really have ever been about that. It's about being honest with myself and being honest with what I want to put out there.
Yeah.
Um, so many factors come into winning and losing anyway. Particularly decisions, things like that. Like there other people come into play with that and other things. But as long as you make an honest account of yourself,
Yeah.
you can look back on your fights in your career and hold your head up high. And that's always been extremely important for me, is just to be honest with who I am, how I feel, how I fight. I'm not going to adjust those things just because somebody's better or worse for that matter. Is I need to be honest with who I am and just give it everything that I have, and who knows what's going to happen. And
Well, yeah, because what I want to say is what I liked about your fight with Sancho, even though you didn't get the decision, you didn't really show him any respect in there, and well, I mean, like you were respectful, but what I
yeah,
mean by no respect is you kept on him, because I think what you see these days is a lot of people, especially foreigners, they get in there and they're just starstruck, and when he gets room, that's when he's good. Whereas you
yeah,
didn't give him room, you kept on him, and he doesn't like it when people don't give him any space.
yeah. Well, that was really the thing I noticed was, I mean, I went back and watched so many of his fights, and particularly his fights with foreigners, was it's as if you get in there and you're just watching the Sanchez show, and you're just in there. People were in such awe of him that they couldn't even or didn't want to do anything. And I vowed that no matter what, I'm not going to just sit there and like wait. I'm going to
Yeah.
push him and try to kill him and break him like I do everybody else. And it was the same thing with Malap. Like you'd see all these fights and he's like smiling and laughing and my buddy Mark, he was helping me train for that fight, Mark Beecher, and he's like, if you see him smile, make sure you crack him in
Yeah.
the mouth. As soon as he does it, and like one point he smiled real quick, bang. I hit him with this straight right, and there was no more smiles. And same thing with Sanchez. It was, the one time he tried to play, and he'd do his cartwheel kick. I kicked him right in the face when he did it, and
Yeah, I saw that.
there was no more smiling and playing around. So, a lot of people like to talk and say he just played around with me, and so I'm like, go watch his fights with other people. That's playing around. He's dancing, laughing, and clowning and waving to the crowd. He didn't do that with me.
No.
I know people will say whatever they're going to say, but I know what happened in there, and he knows what happened in there, and that's all I care about.
Yeah, no, definitely, mate. Now, I've told you some of my favourite fights and memories of yours. What are some of your own personal highlights and achievements over your fighting career so far?
That's such a tough thing to, narrow down. There's been so many, so many fights, so many accomplishments, so many just crazy things that have happened. It would really be impossible for me to even narrow it down to a handful. That fight with Sanchez, I don't think there's anything that could come close to that. And so many fights are different for so many reasons, whether it be going up against somebody with more experience than you, whether it be the show just being huge, whether it be a title, whether it be an injury you're overcoming. So many fights are tough on so many different levels, and so many fights are rewarding in so many different levels. But that fight with Sanchez really kind of encompassed everything, like on so many aspects of that. Personally and professionally and for the sport and everything, there's nothing that really compares to that. But as I said, there's so many fights and events throughout my career that stand out in my mind. It's really tough. Like I like hearing what other people have to say, because for me it's just all kind of one thing as a whole. And I think that's what's important too, is for people to realize that your career isn't just about one fight. And maybe you have this one that kind of cements your name or makes you look really bad or whatever, but it's really about the whole span of your career, and that's what separates the good from the great. It is the span of their career, how they overcame difficulties and losses, how they handled themselves as a champion, how they handled themselves when they lost their number one spot, and it's such a long thing, and it's like a lifespan, and you don't judge someone's life on a day or a week or a year for that matter. It's their entirety of everything they've done.
Yeah. Now, mate, one thing I did want to ask you about is a couple of years ago there was a Facebook account called Warriors of the Mongkon where they did a couple of seasons for Australian Muay Thai fighters, and they used your photo as their profile picture. It was one of you kneeling down because you've got Muay Thai written on your knuckles.
Yeah.
Where was that photo taken?
That was taken in Vegas. It was probably the second year I was in this sport. This magazine, I don't remember the name of the magazine, but they were doing a photo spread on athletes with tattoos. So they had a boxer, they had an MMA guy. Actually, a buddy of mine who was an MMA fighter, he put me in touch with them, and because they wanted a Muay Thai fighter. They had baseball players, football players, all that kind of stuff. So they were just doing a photo shoots of athletes with tattoos, and so we did a bunch of photos. Like they did one with like my hands on the ropes and stuff, and right at the very end, I gave him the idea. I was like, I think this would look cool. Like if I was kneeling down, like doing the white crew and everything. And it just happened and then turned into this thing that's so much bigger than myself. Most people don't even know that's me. I mean, nowadays people kind of do, but for so long, I remember this one time, friend of mine had that as his screensaver on his phone, and he didn't even know that was me.
Yeah.
Because now you can see my face, so
No.
it's just kind of become this iconic image, and I'm really grateful to have contributed something to the sport that people really love. But again, it's not that like that's me. I mean, it is me, but it's more of like a symbol, and I'm grateful that you can't see that it's me, because I think that's also what's helped it grow and be so popular. Is it's more of a faceless
Yeah.
warrior Brown, and I think that's why people really like it, and I love it, even though it is me. I think it's a really cool picture.
Dude, it is a cool as fuck picture. I didn't know it was you until the owner of the Warriors of the Moncon like said, "Oh, thanks for Kevin for letting me use his photo." I was like, "Fuck, that's Kevin Ross. Fuck, that's a sick photo."
Yeah, that's crazy.
Um,
I was in Thailand one time, and this guy right out front of Lumpini had these shirts. It's basically he took my walkout shirt, and then he changed like the tattoos. This has actually been done probably 5 or 6 times by different people. But this was the first time I saw somebody in Thailand, and he was selling them right outside of Lumpini, and I walked up to him and I kind of showed him my tattoos and stuff, and he got really freaked out for a minute. I think he thought I was gonna like I don't know, give him a hard time or whatever. I was like, no, it's cool, and I like took a photo with him, and that's the thing, like a lot of people say, oh, you should have got that trademarked and you could have made money off. I'm like, no, because if it was trademarked, nobody would use it the way they're using
yeah,
it. You know what I mean? Like, and what do I care about some money for a photo? Like, I'm glad people like it. That's all. I think that's cool.
that's it, man. Now, mate, I know you probably don't think so, but you have been inspirational in putting American Muay Thai on the world map. Is
Yeah.
there any young up and comers you think could make the same impact or you, or that you think have the potential to go really far in the sport?
Ooh, that's tough. So to say someone do the same thing I did, well, that's unfortunately that's impossible, because you can't can't start over and do it again. Like, you can take it to that next level for sure, wherever that is, and but I think that's really going to be a combination of things. I mean, clearly there needs to be that fighter that is exciting, that does have the right personality, whatever that may be, and I don't know what that is, but it's also going to need to be the right promotion. These days with everything so visible, um, you need all those aspects of it, and unfortunately that's the thing that's kind of hindered the growth of Muay Thai here in America a lot. Is we'll have like one piece of the puzzle down, and then like everything else just goes to shit, and like,
Yeah,
like you'll have a promotion, they'll have the highest level fighters, yet they won't promote the show correctly, or whatever the case may be, or you'll have promotions that do promote things correctly, but then they cut corners on fighters, and every fighter on there's not the greatest. So you did all this promotion, you brought all these people into the sport who have never seen it before, but now what they're viewing isn't what is the high level,
yeah,
and it's really rare that you find the right combination of things, whether it be a fighter or promotion. And there's always been great fighters, and exciting fighters, and people trying to push the sport and stuff, but it's difficult to say this person's going to do it or that promotion is going to do it, because unfortunately there's no recipe, because nobody knows what that is yet, because it's not been really done.
yeah,
I did me, and I was along at the right time, and did the right things and fought the right people, and the right combination of things happened to develop me as a fighter, and help develop the sport as well. But it's not like it was just one thing,
yeah,
so it's that makes it difficult for everybody, I think, because it would be a lot simpler if it was as easy as just do this, and then we'll grow. But there's no answer, there's really no answer. So it's tough, man. But it's nice that to see the growth of the sport, and to see how many people are passionate about it, and how many people, particularly at the lower levels, and then the amateurs, and the promotions just trying to start up, like that Triumphant Combat show that I commentated a couple weeks back. Like, that was really cool to see people that have that fire that I have, for it, but to see it in others, and to see people still have that is really great. So yeah, I don't know. I don't know what's gonna happen or where it's gonna go, and unfortunately, you don't know if it's gonna go in the right direction either, because it could
Yeah.
get huge, but it could be really tainted as well, which happens more
Yeah.
often than not,
Depends who gets their hands on it.
So it's always been a tough thing for me to be super motivated that it's getting bigger, because you got to take the good with the bad,
Yeah.
and sometimes I wish we were back in the gym fighting.
Uh, awesome. Now, mate, as a person, you've had a lot of life experiences. You've seen some things, you've done some things yourself. If someone out there is listening to this interview and they're going through a bit of a rough patch in life, what would be some advice you would give to them?
My advice, I think I think I think what hinders a lot of people is not realizing that everybody goes through similar things. It's very easy to look at people that have kind of made it in your field and think it was just handed to them, or they were just naturally gifted, or they had the right opportunities, not having any clue what they had to go through and give up and suffer through, and fail through in order to get there. That's always been extremely motivational for me to express the ups and downs of my career, so people know that you're not alone. I go through the same stuff you go through if this is your first day. As I said, like, I still have the same doubts and questions I did before I ever even started, and to realize that it's okay. It's okay to have doubts. It's okay to have fears. It's okay to be scared. It's just a matter of what you're gonna do anyway. You don't get to a point when you just don't have doubt anymore, because there's no guarantee about ever anything. It in times you think it is a guarantee, like you're going up against somebody who has hardly any fights. Like, those are the most dangerous ones. Those are when
Yeah.
you have the most doubts and fears, like, what if this person beats me?
Yeah.
That's the worst thing ever. So you think in some aspects it might be easier. It's more difficult. It's more difficult. It doesn't get easier. It definitely doesn't get easier. You just learn how to handle it more, but those things don't ever go away. And I think I think people need to understand that these people you look at as super brave or super strong or all these things, like, they're just more experienced, but those things don't go away.
Yeah.
You would really be mind blown by how many super high level fighters get crazy nervous
Yeah.
and, like, scared. I remember, like, one of the first times I went to Thailand, this kid had 200 something fights, and he was scared to death. And I just remember thinking, how is that possible? How is
Yeah.
that possible? Like, it didn't make any sense to me at the time, but what you come to realize is, more often than not, it actually gets worse.
Yeah.
More fights you have, because the more experience you get, the more understanding you have of how fragile this is, and how easily bad things can happen, and how there is no matter what you do or how good you get or how hard you train, anything can happen, like, really anything by anybody. So those things just don't go away. And what I try to express to people is, it's okay. Like, for whatever reason, I've always been, like, stupid calm, and, like, most times I'm falling asleep before I go out there. But I'm a weirdo like that, and most people are on the opposite end. Even people with hundreds of fights, and it's better to be nervous. I guarantee you, it's better to be nervous, because at least then you have adrenaline. You're sharp. The worst thing you can do is be half asleep going into something that can get you killed.
Killed. Yeah.
it doesn't really matter what side of the equation you're on. It's about finding ways to not let it negatively affect you. And that's really with everything. It's about finding that right balance of not being too calm and not being too nervous, and being able to function yet still be able to stay sharp, uh, yet still be able to stay relaxed. And it's similar to how fighting is, where you need to be extremely tight in your
Yeah,
defense, yet you need to be extremely loose and relaxed. So you simultaneously have to be tight and relaxed. It doesn't make any sense, but you have to learn how to do that.
yeah,
Oh, and that's with everything. You constantly, it's this juggling act of that middle line, which you can't ever hit. And you're just hopping on both sides, like
yeah.
too sharp, too relaxed, too sharp, too relaxed, and yeah, you're never gonna get there. And if you do, tell me, because I would love to know it.
It's like trying to use that channel that nerves and stuff and use it positive as rather as a negative.
Yeah, I mean, and it's a universal thing, just like fear, just like injury, just like doubt, just like everything, man. It's every aspect of life is learning how to use it for a positive and not let it affect you negatively. And wins, losses, ups, downs, it's all the same. You have to learn how to use the good and the bad for positive. That's
Yeah,
it. And that's never going to change, and it's never really going to get easier. You just get more experienced. But it changes so much, and different things happen, and things you never could imagine are going to pop up that you've never experienced before, and then you're back to square one in the sense of you're in uncharted waters, and it's I think realizing that that's never going to go away, it might be a little discouraging, but it's also should be motivating in the fact that we all go through the same stuff at every level of the sport, whether it's your first day or you've been doing this for 20 years. Like we all deal with different things, and different levels, but very similar aspects of it. Every single person has to go through something, and it doesn't make you special that you're going through something.
awesome, brother. Awesome. Well summed up. Well summed up. Now, mate, what's the plan fight wise 2018 for Kevin Ross?
Hopefully a lot of fights. Yeah, but again, as it's been my whole career, that's so much of that is out of my hands, and I'm hoping that, well, I'm pretty positive Varga and I are going to be fighting for the title. Um, mm, Probably within the first half of the year. I'd say July at the latest. Um, Still not positive yet what's going on with it, and there's other fights up in the air right now.
Yeah,
But yeah, I'm hoping to be back in the ring in some way, in somewhere, at least within the first 4 months of the year, if not sooner. But yeah, I don't have nothing's set in stone right now.
yeah,
Hopefully, know here pretty soon, within the next week or two. They're getting their card set and location set, and which show is going to be the big show, which is what they'll put the title fight on, and whether I get a fight before that or not is it's everything's kind of up in the air right now, which is
cool.
tough, but it's always up in the air, ain't it? Like that's never changed. So we'll see. I'm just staying ready like I always do, and I'm gonna take the first thing that pops its head up.
Awesome, brother. Awesome. Now, mate, if people want to contact you or follow your progress and like stay up to date with your fight wise, how can they do that?
So my Instagram and my Twitter are both the Soul Assassin with a D-A, Soul Assassin, and
Yeah,
then my Facebook is Kevin the Soul Assassin. So facebook.com/Kevin the Soul Assassin. And yeah, I pretty much stay very active on all those daily, so it's pretty easy to find out what I'm doing and where. So.
awesome, mate. And last but not least, mate, is there anyone you wish to thank? Sponsors, shout outs?
Oh yeah, I wrote it down this time because I always forget. I always get in trouble. Yeah, all my sponsors, Monster Energy, On It, Triumph United are my main sponsors. A huge shout out and thanks to them. Action Pro Gear is who does my walkout shirts, so if you want to purchase those, you can hit them up. Muay Thai Addict does all my shorts, all the shorts I fight in. They also do the vests that I've come out in a few times. Huge shout out to Out of the Cave, who keeps me healthy with all their meal prep and stuff, and just all my coaches, training partners, friends, family, all my fans. You guys are really what has kept me doing this for as long as I have, and I can't thank all you know people like you having me on and doing interviews and stuff. I'm very grateful and feel very fortunate to be able to still be doing this.
No, man. Well, I just want to say from me, thank you, man, for taking the time to have an interview. Like I said, I honestly didn't expect that I'd get a reply back, and you were so cool about it. So I really
Yeah, it's my
appreciate
pleasure,
it,
man. It's really my pleasure.
mate. Thanks so much for your time, man, and have